Welcome back to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. Let's hear from our sponsors. We want to thank Huddle for helping sponsor the Educational AD Podcast. If you're not a Huddle school yet, you need to sign up. Huddle has more than 180,000 teams, including the best in the world, and they use their technology and video analytics to help their teams perform at their very best. Huddle has online tools, mobile and desktop apps, smart cameras, and more to help your coaches do a better job of coaching their players. Go to huddle.com and find out more. Huddle is currently working with youth programs, high school, college, all the way up to the professional ranks. Millions of coaches and athletes make Huddle their home for performance analysis with over 6 million users, including your players, your parents, and the colleges and universities you're trying to get your players recruited to. Once again, go to huddle.com and find out more about how to become a Huddle school. We also want to thank Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack for sponsoring the Athletic Director's Toolbox segment of our podcast. Athletic surveys are a quick, easy, and affordable way to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your athletic program. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack also gives the 95% of the parents and the players who participate for your school an opportunity to share the importance of an athletic experience has for them. Right? You should go to athleticsurveys.com and check out their testimonials, and then call them at 1-800-738-6466, or you can email them at info@athleticsurveys.com for more information. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack. Let them help you take your athletic program from good to great. We also want to thank Violet Defense. Violet Defense is dedicated to protecting our world from germs by bringing the power of UV disinfection to everyday spaces. Their patented technology allows them to harness the power of the sun to incorporate ultraviolet light into products and environments like never before. Whether you're ready to implement existing products, or if you'd like to explore researching and developing a custom deployment of their technology for your school, Violet Defense has the solutions and the experience that you need. Thanks again to Violet Defense for sponsoring the Educational AD Podcast. Go to their website at violetdefense.com for more information. We also want to say thanks to Sideline Interactive. We have a Sideline Interactive video score table in our gym, and it is truly a fantastic product. You know, it's becoming harder and harder to fund an athletic department these days, but Sideline Interactive's indoor scoring tables and video boards can generate $10,000 or more every year while creating excitement in the gym and the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. Go to sidelineinteractive.com or call 832-786-0302 to schedule a live web demo and see their tables and boards in action. Find out what these fantastic products can do for you. You can also email them at sales@sidelineinteractive.com. That's sales@sidelineinteractive.com. You know, Wall of Fame by Vital Signs is on a mission to bring your school's legacy to life. They provide a variety of interactive touchscreen options and an extensive library of templates to make it easier than ever to recognize the athletic achievements of your students, both past and present. For ideas on how to showcase your school's diverse history, along with your proudest moments, visit vitalsignswalloffame.com, or to learn more and get started on your own digital Wall of Fame tribute, call them at 614-981-3589 or email them at sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. You won't be disappointed. We also want to thank our good friends at Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. For more information, go to hometownticketing.com. That's Hometown Ticketing, simple and easy online ticketing. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We've got a really cool guest today, Lance Loya. Lance, gosh, he's an author. He's a speaker, his former coach. You can find more about him, and we'll hear more about it at coachloya.com. He founded the Good Teammate Factory, and he's written several books, including, and this is really one of my favorites. I've got it right here. Let me get it on the camera. There we go. The We Gear. Okay, how teammates can shift from me to we. Really, really cool book. Lance, welcome to the podcast.
Jake, thank you so much for including me in your project. And I really have been looking forward to this conversation with you. So thank you.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say, we touched base, gosh, I think it was back in the summer. And, again, long story short, we got you on the podcast. So no, we're very glad to have you and appreciate you sharing some time with us. We always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So give us that 5-minute bio, tell us where you grew up, where you went to school, maybe some early coaching gigs and how you got on this path of helping athletic directors and coaches, do a better job.
Okay. So I don't know if I'm going to use all the 5 minutes. I'll try and keep it brief here. So I live in Orlando, near Orlando, Florida right now. In fact, I live very close to Walt Disney World. I can look out my home office window here and I can see the nightly fireworks in the Magic Kingdom. But I'm originally from a very rural part of Western Pennsylvania. In fact, there are two classic sports movies filmed in what would be the closest town to where I lived. The football movie with Tom Cruise, All the Right Moves.
Oh, great movie. Great movie.
And then the great hockey movie, Slapshot with the great Paul Newman. So that I kind of grew up there, in both of those movies. There's the backdrop to both of them is kind of the steel mills are closing down. The economy's not going well. What do we do now? What are we going to do now? And I guess that was kind of a theme to a lot of my childhood growing up. The coal mills and steel mills were struggling. So sports were a big part of life. And, like a lot of kids in the Rust Belt communities, sports were, an opportunity to find identity, to, for some to find a way out, to find a better spot in life. And it was certainly true for me. So I gravitated towards sports, and I lettered in 5 different sports in high school. Eventually I settled upon basketball in college, and my collegiate playing career didn't amount to a whole lot, but eventually I found myself in the coaching ranks, and I loved that lifestyle, and I thought that would be, my life's path. And then an unexpected sequence of events kind of changed the trajectory of my life. I had a player after about 15 years of coaching, and I coached at, I think I've coached at every level at one point or time. I've coached the elementary kids. I was a head junior high coach. I was a head high school varsity coach, and then I moved on to the collegiate ranks. I think I did so at a very young age too. I don't know. Time will tell if that was good or bad. I think when I was hired, I was the second youngest head coach in the NCAA. And it was only by like a week or two. My birthday was in December, and the person ahead of me was early January. So it was very close. But anyhow, so fast forward maybe 15 years or so of coaching, and I had a player win this award, and it was the All-State Good Works Award. It's basically for student athletes who use their position as a student athlete to go out in their communities and make a positive difference. Well, flying home from watching that young man receive the award, I had a very turbulent plane flight, and it kind of scared me. And it led to me writing this silly little children's book called Be a Good Teammate. And I never intended that thing to be anything else than Daddy's last words, last bit of advice to my own daughters. That's all that book was ever. And I came home, I got off my flight, and I sketched out these very rudimentary drawings, and I printed them off our little inkjet printer, which is what we had back then, and folded them in half and sat them on the kitchen counter. And as those things go, my wife shows it to some of her dance mom friends, or show it to their friends, and it became a book. And the book really changed things for me, and it got me to really think about how important it is to be a good teammate and what that means. And I started getting asked to come and speak at children's book festivals and at elementary schools. And that's really not my forte. But I saw that opportunity as an opportunity for me to grow professionally, personally as well. And I kind of jumped on it. And that led to me really becoming obsessed with this concept, this idea of being a good teammate. And I think, you look at almost every problem in our society, it really comes down to people not being good teammates, whether it's bullying or, broken homes, or like the shenanigans that go on in Wall Street and in politics. All that comes down to people not being good teammates. So it became a mission for me to spread that message. And eventually I left coaching, and now I travel and speak full time to schools and at conferences and to corporate events about the art of being a good teammate. You can think of me, Jake, if you made an analogy with the medical field, there's lots of physicians in the world, lots of family doctors, there's lots of specialists. But if you have a very rare form of cancer, you want to go to a specialist, an oncologist who specializes in that form. And that's kind of what I do. I'm a specialist, and I specialize in one thing, and that's the art of being a good teammate. I help people become better teammates, and I help people help others become better teammates.
Yeah,
was I under 5 minutes? I hope.
Oh, no, that was fantastic. Very cool. I love the origin stories. And although I have not read Be a Good Teammate, which I see over your shoulder there in your bookcase, I think I know a lot about it because you are very prolific in a very good way on Twitter. And I've been on your website and I've looked at your resources there, and just some really, really cool stuff. As I'm perusing it, I found myself saying many times, boy, I wish I would have had this, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Talk a little bit about the book, The We Gear. I was going through it last night again, and it's all highlighted and the pages are folded and things like that. And I was trying to think, well, what can I ask him? So I'm going to throw one point at you. Don't mean to ambush you. And then maybe, pick out maybe one other nugget to share that you think is maybe a key nugget for a coach or an AD. And for our listeners, I'm telling you, this is a book you really want to add to your library. I picked out, it's fairly early. You have a section called Pleasure versus Happiness. And you kind of talked about the book, The Hacking of the American Mind. You remember those points?
Oh, yes.
Those just really jumped out at me. So maybe share very briefly that section, how it's going to help a coach or an AD. And then if there's another one that you'd like to share, we'll certainly have time for that.
Yeah. Well, let's backtrack just a second. So the book was written by a coach for athletics personnel, because listen, we have unconventional, atypical lifestyles, and we are not 9-to-5 people. So I tried to write it in a format. It was written specifically for those people. So it's like some chunks of knowledge, or little sections. You can sit down, and it's what often they call a bathroom reader. So you can read a section in a single sitting, if you will. And then you move on to the next. You might not be able to pick that book back up for days or weeks, months even. But when you pick it back up, you're not going to be lost. You're not going to have to review anything. So it's kind of written that way. And I also wrote it with the idea that it was going to be a book study for teams to read together. And I was going to broach the topics that coaches wanted to talk about, but didn't really know how to get into with their teams. So I was going to give them an opportunity, like, we can talk about this now because we're all on the same page, quite literally. So the passage you reference there about the difference between pleasure and happiness. And I think you know, this is a big problem for not just athletes, but for society in general. When we pursue, you know, our agendas, you know, what are we after? And a lot of time we're chasing pleasure. I mean, it's the, you know, the next high. It's whether it's a, you know, a drug or alcohol or cigarettes or whatever, or you know, parties, whatever that may be. And you're always looking for that next high, where in reality, people who chase pleasure, they can never get enough of it, because you can, you know, you become addicted to it, and as you get one high from it, it goes on. And it's not, whereas happiness, you can't have too much happiness. There's no such thing as overdosing on happiness. So people pursuing those pleasure things, instead of pursuing things that are going to give them happiness, and any number of things can produce that chemical reaction in our body. And there is an actual biochemical difference between things that give us pleasure versus things that give us happiness. So here, I'll give you an example. I was speaking recently to a juvenile detention center, and we do this exercise with them, and they're talking about, well, what do you want? So getting someone in that position to think 5 or 10 years down the road what their life might look like is a challenge. So you start telling them, well, I want a big house. Okay, why do you want a big house? So I can throw big parties. Why do you want to throw a big party? So all my friends can come over. Why do you want your friends? Because I like hanging out with my friends. Why? And eventually you get to the point, because it makes me happy. Now, what did they really want? They wanted happiness. Now, we can get you to that same point so that your body has exactly that same sensations in any number of different paths. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. And it's just, it's a knowledge thing that you share that idea when they understand, like, oh, I guess I don't have to do that. Maybe I can pursue this avenue. So I guess that's the one point. If I had to pick out another point from the book, well, Jake, let me ask a question. Like, think of yourself and your professional career and your time as an AD, and not just yourself, maybe all the plethora of guests you've had on the show. What would you say is their biggest problem, their biggest challenge, or maybe 1 or 2, 3 things? What do you think presents them the biggest challenges, complaints?
Oh my goodness. I'm going to go ahead and use one of my own, but I think there's some commonalities with all of us, is just finding that balance between, work and family. We're all in this profession, that alpha, mentality and that drive to succeed and win and help others succeed and win, kids, coaches, you name it. And then going home, at least for me, there were many times I had a hard time, turning the switch off. So just finding that balance, I think.
Yeah, I would say that's a big one. Any others?
Well, I guess from a practical standpoint, resources, and maybe that's, time on the job. I was very fortunate as an AD at my last couple of jobs. I was a full-time AD. I wasn't teaching, I wasn't coaching. So I had all day to do my job. Others that I talked to, they're, the head coach in the fall, they're an assistant coach in the spring, and they're teaching 4 or 5 sections of a course, and they only have 1 period, and maybe not even any period, to do their athletic director duty. So, just finding time and resources.
Yeah, I think both of your points there fall into the same category. And I bet if you talk to all your guests, they would add those 2. And I suspect the third would be just relationship challenges and relationships. Those are dealing with difficult parents, or dealing
without
with
question,
coaches that are not on the same thing. You got the football coach, it's raining outside, they want to practice inside, and think the volleyball coach should give up the practice time so they can't, or just students who are, well, all of those issues. Mm-hmm. The 2 you mentioned, plus they all come down to, selfishness. It's people are incapable of putting we ahead of me. And they don't understand how their selfishness impacts others. So I think what I do, and where this gets a bit back into the we gear, the original question is, we often tell people that we recognize the problem is selfishness. And even in like the first example you gave about, the self-care, not turning it off. I mean, you walk a fine line between trying to be selfless, and because you're so selfless, you end up being selfish for not self-care. And that's what happens to, people who care so much, they burn out because of they don't take care of themselves. So you become selfish. Well, all those things, and selfishness, I'm fond of saying, selfishness sinks ships, whether it's relationships, partnerships, friendships, championships, and especially leaderships. You've got to find a way to deal with selfishness. So here's what happens. You identify, the problem is selfish. You got that parent, they're only thinking about their child, or that coach who's only thinking about their team, and the player is not thinking about the rest of the members, but only himself. So you tell them you're being selfish. Well, they put up this defensive wall with that, and they don't really grasp it. You got to be a better teammate, you tell them. But then the problem is the leader, we don't lay out specifically what that means. We don't put it in terms that will not only they can understand, but they can easily recall. And I think that's what the we gear is. The we gear is a way of warding off selfishness. And I just very brief, I'll explain it. So we'll steal the analogy of driving a car. Can you drive a stick shift?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, I would say you're one of the, well, I'm certain you're one of the exceptions. Most people can't. So, it's a lost art in many ways, but those who can understand. All right. So you're going up a steep hill, you need more power, you shift into a lower gear. You're on a highway, need more speed, shift to higher gear. Before you shift gears, you've got to depress, engage the clutch. And this is known as a clutch moment. Well, as humans, we have clutch moments in our lives. It's those junctures where we got to make a quick decision about which way we're going to proceed. Most people, when they reach those clutch moments, go into the me gear. They choose what's best for me. And me becomes the center, the basis for all their decisions. Whereas good teammates come to those clutch moments, shift into the we gear. They base their decisions based on the answer to one question: what's best for the team? And when you ingrain that mentality, when you emphasize it, recognize it, and reward it, you increase the likelihood of it being repeated. So that is what the we gear is meant to do.
Very cool stuff. And again, whether you're a coach with a team or you're an AD dealing with a team of coaches, that whole we concept is critical. For our listeners, we're talking with Lance Loya, author, speaker, and coach. We're going to hear some more wisdom, but let's take a quick break and hear from a couple of our sponsors. We want to thank Huddle for helping sponsor the podcast. Huddle powers sports. They have over 180,000 teams, including the best in the world, that use their product to elevate the performance of their student athletes and their coaches. Huddle is the complete package. They have online tools, mobile and desktop apps, smart cameras, including the Huddle Focus. We have one at our school. Analytics, of course, and much, much more. Okay, go to their website. You can browse their products. Huddle's built for every level, from the youth through high school and college, and even up into the professional ranks. Over 6 million users, including your student athletes, your parents, and probably the colleges and universities that you're trying to get your kids recruited by. 1 billion highlight views and counting. Kids are on the Huddle platform. If you're not, you should be. They have school packages that are available. If you want to learn more, go to huddle.com and see how you can become a member of the Huddle team. We're back with Lance Loya. Lance, we always like to ask our guests to share who are their mentors, who helped get you to where you're at today. None of us get here on our own. So who are some people, maybe family members or coaches, or maybe people you've worked with or worked for? The expression I like to use is I still hear those voices in my head. Yeah. So whose voice do you still hear?
That is such a great summation. You hear the voices. I know people are listening on the podcast. They might not see the video, but I'm smiling right now. And if you could see inside, my heart is smiling. I bet every guest you asked that question to, because those people touch you. I happen to believe that, we all have our personal Mount Rushmore. It's those 4 individuals who really had the biggest impact on our life. And it's usually someone who influenced our values, someone who influenced, our work ethic, someone who influenced our career path, and then someone who influenced our outlook on life. And it's an interesting question, because the first adult nonfiction book I wrote was called Building Good Teammates. And the subtitle of that was the story of my Mount Rushmore, a coaching epiphany, and that none. The coaching epiphany being that this is what we need to emphasize in youth sports, being a good teammate. But my Mount Rushmore, with a lot of the book, is a lot about those 4 people who had an impact on my life. And the people were Dennis Gibson, who was my junior college coach, basketball coach. And Dennis is in the the NCAA Hall of Fame. He's got his 800 plus career wins. I was very blessed to coach him. Just a phenomenal coach. And I know it's a cliche, but he's even a more phenomenal person. And I really learned so much about trust and the value of loyalty and commitment from Coach Gibson. So I was blessed to have him be a mentor. The other mentor I had was a man named Mike Burton, who I played for and eventually worked for when I was overseas. And his name's not a household name in America, but in British basketball, he's royalty. I mean, he's a legend. And the fact that he is not, for all Mike Burton has done for sports in the United Kingdom, the fact that he has not been knighted yet is one of the great travesties of this lifetime. But Mike was such a hard worker, and he got so much more done than most people were able to. And I really learned a lot about work ethic and the time management from Mike. And then a third mentor was Tim Kelly, who was the athletic director who hired me for my first collegiate job. Just a tremendous boss, tremendous person. I really learned a lot about how to nurture relationships and how to treat people the right way. And Tim was great at that. And then the 4th person on my Mount Rushmore was my father. And I had a very challenging, difficult relationship with my father. It eventually became a very estranged relationship with him. But I like to think that, we learn from everybody who comes into our lives. Sometimes it's what to do, sometimes it's what not to do. And I think that was certainly the case with my father, which is why those other mentors are so important, having them in your life. And a lot of student athletes are just like that, which is why those athletic directors and coaches or teachers are so important to them. Then in the book, I bring a 5th face into the Mount Rushmore, and it was this quirky 80-year-old nun named Sister Eric Marie. She just loved sports, and she was a sport fanatic, and she would come to the games, and she really became one of my closest friends. And we just had these deep talks about life. I don't know, in all the many, many hours I talked to her, I don't think we ever talked once about religion or faith. It was always just about life. And one of my first interactions with Sister Eric, I was coaching a game, and she would always come and sit right behind the bench. And one of the first games I ever coached, I didn't really know who she was. And afterwards, our team lost, and we shot terribly. And I was probably guilty of being a young coach and letting the wrong players take shots at the wrong times. I walk out of the locker room, and Sister's standing there waiting on me. She says, "Coach, God created all men equal, not all shooters." And that kind of started this endearing relationship I had with her. And she really, really showed me, how you as a human being can use your talents to positively impact the lives of others. So those were kind of my main mentors. And of course, now, I learned from a lot of people. Some I don't know, like you, Jake. I learned from this podcast all the time, and your book, The Athletic Director's Toolbox, it was fantastic. And I'm not just saying that. I'm not buttering you up or anything. I really did like it. It is a wonderful reference for leaders in sports of all levels. And I like reading George Raveling's. He's been a great mentor for me from a distance. I'm a huge John Wooden fan. I read everything I can about his life. And in fact, one of the best moments of my life, I was at a convention. I was at a book signing, and with my books, and the person next to me was Jamal Wilkes. Now, your younger listeners probably won't know that name, but he was a basketball star back in the late 70s, early 80s. He was a member of the Los Angeles Lakers. I think it was Silk, and Silk was a part of that Showtime with the Lakers with Magic Johnson and Kareem and that whole team. But Jamal had played at UCLA for John Wooden, Coach Wooden, doing their long run there. And Jamal happened to pick up my children's book and was leafing through it, and he got this big smile on his face, and he looked at me and closed and said, "Coach Wooden would have loved this." And I was like, that's like one of the best compliments of my life. So those were my mentors.
Wow, what a great collection, and love you working in the John Wooden, Jamal Wilkes, originally known as Keith Wilkes back in the day. So great stuff. Again, we're visiting with Lance Loya, author, speaker, coach, and teammate expert. We're going to come back for more, but let's take another quick break and hear from one of our sponsors. We also want to thank Sideline Interactive video score tables and video boards for helping sponsor the podcast. It's becoming harder and harder to fund an athletic department these days, but Sideline Interactive's indoor scoring tables and video boards can generate $10,000 or more every year, while also creating excitement in the gym and the ultimate game day experience for your athletes. Go to sidelineinteractive.com or call them at 832-786-0302 to schedule a live web demo to see their tables and boards in action and see what these fantastic products can do for you. You can also email them at sales@sidelineinteractive.com. That's sales@sidelineinteractive.com. You won't be disappointed. We also want to thank Vital Signs Wall of Fame. Vital Signs has a mission to bring your school's legacy to life. They provide a variety of interactive touchscreen options, along with an extensive library of templates to make it easier than ever to recognize the athletic achievements of your students, both past and present. For more ideas on how to showcase your school's diverse history, along with your proudest moments, visit vitalsignswalloffame.com, or to learn more and get started with your own digital Wall of Fame tribute, call them at 614-981-3589, or you can email them at sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. That's sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. Welcome back, everyone, to our visit with Lance Loya. Lance, you've got quite an impressive website that shares the services that you provide for businesses, for leaders, and for our audience, athletic directors and coaches. So what I want to do is screen share your website, but just give you an opportunity to tell our audience, and I'm telling you, listeners, you really need to check this out and find out all the things that Lance can do for you. But share with our listeners why they should be taking advantage of your services. So let me go ahead and do a screen share here. There we go. And I'm going to let Lance talk while I just kind of scroll through.
Okay, peruse the site, Jake. So, we've mentioned social media earlier. My social media and the website in general all came about because of my obsession with being the art of being a good teammate. I wanted to find ways to share my discoveries. If I came across a good idea or an insight or a way you can improve something, I needed to get that information out. And that's how the social media, I started posting simple little ideas that I came across. And I started a blog, and that blog following, my mailing list, has grown exponentially. It far exceeded any of my wildest dreams. And you can sign up for the blog right on the website. And we send out an email, a newsletter every Tuesday called Teammate Tuesdays. You just scrolled past there, I think, about the Good Teammate Quiz. What a wonderful resource for coaches and athletic administrators, or just team leaders in general. We offer a quiz on our website. So one of the hardest things about coaching or about leadership in general is broaching a difficult subject. I mean, how do you tell somebody on your team that they're being selfish without somehow compromising your relationship with them? You really have to be an established relationship to reach that point. Well, I help teams accelerate that. So what you do is teams go in, you can take it as an individual, and you take it all together as a team if you'd like. But it's just a short quiz. It's a 3 to 4 minutes quiz, and just ask a series of questions. And at the end of the quiz, you get a score and what kind of a teammate you are. And what this does, and the advantage it gives leaders is people take the quiz. If they're a good teammate, they're going to score high on it, and they're going to receive the justifiable vindication that they want. They need to be, reminded they are a good teammate. The ones who score low, which most of us score lower on the quiz than we anticipate scoring. And our first reaction is always, oh, that's garbage. That's ridiculous. And then they move on to stage 2 and they start thinking like, well, I don't do that very well. I could get better at that. And then eventually they move on to the third and final stage. You know what? I'm going to do better at that. I'm going to make a point to really try and improve on that. And as a coach, you go to this. Oh, you took the quiz? How'd you score? Oh, why do you think you scored low in that? You didn't score very high in loyalty, huh? Well, what do you think you could do to improve that? It really opens up avenues for the difficult yet impactful conversations you need to have. And then you scroll down further, you came across the Good Teammate Factory. We have an online course, and this is fabulous for teams, especially teams that are struggling. You think of an athletic director and all your headaches. You're constantly putting out fires and plugging holes in the dike, all those little problems, and you really want to grow. But all you can do to keep up with the demands on your time is keep your head above the water, and all you're doing is existing. You're never allowing yourself an opportunity to excel because you just don't have the time for it. Well, the reality is, if you stepped back and made time, you carved out a time to work on your culture and solve those little problems, you'll move from existing to excelling. So the course, it's basically it replaces a practice. So you take a day off practice. Instead of going to the gym or to the field, you go into a classroom or an auditorium and you go through this course. And it's a series of modules that walks you through the 5 key behaviors of good teammates. ALIVE. Anybody can be a good teammate. All you have to do is be alive. And that's an acronym that stands for active, loyal, invested, viral, and empathetic. We talk about each of those, and every course module has an interactive activity that's going to help improve your team culture. And actually, Jake, right now they're running a special on that. So any of your listeners are interested in doing this with a team, if you go and you enter the code WINTER, because we're getting ready for winter sports are starting up. So if you're a fall sport and your team's struggling, or if you're a winter sport and you want to set the culture, enter the code WINTER, and it gives you 50% off the already discounted price. So it's a good deal. I'm looking at your screen. You're scrolling across some of the posters. We want a good culture. Culture starts with environment. You can download free posters that you can print off and hang around your office or your locker room, your classrooms. We have the podcast, or these short little disseminations of good teammate thoughts. They're, all in that 5-minute range. So pop one of these on in your drive, your commute to work in the morning, and you're going to set your day up for positivity.
Okay. That's the Good Teammate podcast with Lance Loya. They're on Apple, Spotify, Google, same carriers that our podcast is on.
And then the blogs, the Teammate Tuesday blogs. We come out one every week. Yesterday was a Tuesday, and we did 20 ways to be coachable. And these are just thoughts, ideas to make you think about, well, how can I implement this and improve the quality of teammates on my team? We all, there's a lot of good leadership experts and teamwork and team building experts, but I really focus on the teammate, with the logic being you improve the individual teammate. Teamwork and all those other issues will become byproducts of that, and they'll take care of themselves. Then the books, all the books, you can all get them on my website, as well as all the normal book outlets.
And again, I personally recommend the We gear, but you can see if you go to Lance's website, lanceloya.com, or excuse me, coachloya.com, you can see the wide variety of books and resources. You can also get on the mailing list. Really, really valuable resource for any athletic director or coach. And he's, as I mentioned, very active on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and all the other platforms. So very cool stuff. Lance, we're going to do this again, but if one of our listeners wants to reach out, what's the best way that they can get in touch with you?
I'm on all the normal, usual social media outlets. You can always send me DMs there. I have all my accounts are open, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You can also go to our website, coachloya.com, LOYA.com. And there's a contact form on there. You can email us and we get in touch with you. We're pretty good about getting back to people. In fact, we always get back to people. We try to be good teammates to others.
Very good about getting back. I remember I was very impressed with the quick response. We're going to be back and find out what Lance Loya is going to put in his athletic director's toolbox. We want to give a shout out to Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack for sponsoring the AD Toolbox. And like I said, we're going to find out what Lance is going to put in his toolbox when we come back. Please stay with us. We want to thank Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack for sponsoring the Athletic Director's Toolbox segment. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack are a quick, easy, and affordable way to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your athletic program. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack also allows you to give the 95% of the players and the parents who really love your program a voice, and helps to demonstrate the importance that a positive athletic experience has on their lives and your community. Go to athleticsurveys.com and click on their testimonials, and then give them a call at 1-800-738-6466, or you can email them at info@athleticsurveys.com to get started. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack. Let them help you take your athletic program from good to great. Once again, we're back with Lance Loya. Lance, this has been so cool, connecting face to face. I know we've, emailed and texted and talked before, but we're not done yet. We always like to wrap up with what we call the athletic director's toolbox. So right now, I'm going to give you an opportunity to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first job, but I'm only going to let you put 3 things in their toolbox. What 3 items are going to go in Lance Loya's Athletic Surveys athletic director toolbox?
It's good. This is such a great question. And I was thinking about, I could say, well, put my book, Wii gear in there, put the quiz and put the course in it. That'd be such a short answer. So I was trying to think, what else can I give? What more? So
well, I think those are all great tools. So we're going to assume that there's a copy of your book and the website are in there. Absolutely.
Okay, good. So I was thinking, the business community, and prior to my current line of work, I didn't work a lot with corporate America. I was always just sports and the athletic, our little world. But I really come to appreciate how much the corporate world steals from sports, and they use analogies and they use to motivate all the time. But in retrospect, sports doesn't really steal that much from business, and we need to look for the business world a lot for examples. And I think this is a good one, especially for a new athletic director, because there's such a big difference between making a decision versus making a suggestion. So, almost every company successful company I've come across, they always have some sort of, a hierarchy of priorities or their hierarchy of standards. I mentioned Disney earlier in the podcast. Disney has what I think they call their quality service cycle, their quality service standards. And it's basically, that yes, every company's there to make business, but there's a model to it. And there's four parts to their standards. It's their safety, courtesy, show, and efficiency. Safety being that of their their guests and employees. Courtesy is how they treat their guests and employees. Show is the performance they put on and how it's the wow factor to what they do. And then efficiency is how their operations work. They don't want people coming there and waiting in line too long because it ruins their experience. Now those are all four good, but there's a hierarchy to them. They prioritize those. Safety comes first, then courtesy, then show, and efficiency. Now you think about it, there can be a conflict between your priorities. See, if you have them laid out and prioritize them, you default, you make your decision making easier. So from Disney perspective, you say you want to keep your rides running smoothly and they're on schedule, but what happens if you have someone who comes up in a wheelchair or with a cane or a walker? Well, you've got to slow that ride down, slow that line down to get them safely on there. Safety trumps. Or what happens if, Test Track is a great ride. Everybody likes to go to Epcot and ride Test Track. But what happens if it's lightning outside? That ride is no longer safety and it shuts down. That's the end of the discussion. So how this translates to athletics, think of what you want out of your athletic department. Is it to win championships? Is it to get student athletes college scholarships? Is it to give them this, a whole, quality of experience? Is it to provide entertainment to your, to your school and your community? All of those things may be the case. Which one's the most important? And then prioritize. You only need like 3 or 4 of those. And if you prioritize them, well, suddenly your decision making, you ease that burden a little bit. So you have, if you have a muddy field, well, if safety is your priority, then you're not worried whether or not that gives you an advantage or disadvantage for Friday night's game, because safety trumps that. Or if you have, if you're trying to say you want a holistic experience for your student athletes, and you've got a coach, though maybe she's winning championships or he's winning banners, but they're only playing their top 5 or 6 athletes, are they really providing those kids a quality experience? And if they're never doing anything outside of the playing field, there's no team bonding experience, are they really? And you look at it that way, they're probably failing. So, and you take those priorities. So I'd say my first tool, Jake, is that hierarchy of priorities. So that's tool number 1. Tool number 2, now very closely related to that, I would say you need some means, some metrics of measuring the evaluating the student athlete experience. And I am a firm believer that not everything that measures counts, and not everything that can be counted, or what's the expression? Not everything that counts can be measured, and not everything that is measured counts. And I believe that. But I got to believe at some point somebody on your show, one of your administrators, athletic director, said, document, document, document. That's like administration, leadership 101. Well, you want to do your best to try and document. So if you can provide an end of the season survey to your student athletes and gauge the kind of experience they had, and don't do it right after the last game of the season. Give it a couple weeks and bring them in and evaluate and look at it, see what they have to say. Ask questions. Is my coach supporting my academic needs? Is my coach in tune with my social needs? Is my coach helping me develop my athletic skills? And you ask those questions. There's always going to be the anomaly. There's some coach or parent who had a bad experience and didn't get clashed with their coach. There's always going to be somebody that the coach could do no wrong in their eyes. So as an administrator, you're looking for those trends, and you start seeing the same things pop up over and over. That sends off a red flag. And maybe that's something, I don't like my coach's language. I don't like the coach talking to me and swearing at me. Well, then maybe that's something you need to address with your coach, your staff. But the other thing it does in terms of document, sometimes you as an athletic administrator, your coach is giving those student athletes a quality experience. She cares about them. He's taking them to do off-court things. But for whatever reason, they're just they're coming up short in the win-loss column. And the boosters, the alumni, maybe your superiors are on you about that. Well, this survey, you go to those people and say, look, I know they're coming up short, but look at these student athletes. They adore her. They are having a great quality experience. And that's what we're trying to give our student athletes. So that provides you maybe the fodder you need to protect your staff members, be a good teammate to them. And then third, all right, so convert your support staff into teammates. I'm talking about your custodians, or maybe it's the business people, the accounting people, or the secretaries, whoever it is. But you think, you can have the best culture laid out. You can have all of the best hires in the world, the best equipment, the best facilities, and one underappreciated custodian will derail the whole operation. Now, people often say, and this one just, it grates on me when I hear it. I say, well, I hook him up with some gear. I hook them up with gear. That's nice, but you're doing yourself a disservice if that's all you're doing. The great Chuck Noll, the Pittsburgh Steelers coach from the 70s and 80s, had it a saying that the mercenaries will always defeat the draftees, but the volunteers will crush them both. Now, if you're hooking your custodians up with gear and that's all you're doing, you're making them mercenaries, and they're helping you now as long as you're hooking them up. But you want them to become volunteers. You want to bring them into the fold and make them feel as if they are part of the team, and make them part of the team. So invite them to your end of season banquets, invite them to your pregame dinners. Now, include them in those team athletic functions, and pretty soon they feel like, yeah, I'm part of the team too. And they stop being just interested in the team, and they start being invested in the team. And then, if one appreciated custodian can derail the whole operation, I assure you, one invested custodian can save the day and really be there when you need them the most, because you've made them into a good teammate. So there's my 3 tools, Jake.
Wow. Great stuff. I love the comment about, not everything that matters, can be counted, and not everything that you can count matters. And again, you really can't overestimate the impact of nurturing and developing, those very important support people that you mentioned as part of that family, as part of that team. Great stuff. Okay. Lance, Loya, one more time. If one of our listeners wants to reach out, and folks, you better do this. It's a great resource. What's the best way that they can get in touch with you?
Easiest way, you can social media, you can send me direct messages. It's just the easiest way is Google my name, Lance Loya, and all those resources are going to pop. Technology is great, for that. But on Twitter, it's at Coach Lance Loya, Facebook and Instagram. We just started a new Instagram account, so it's fairly new. So go and follow us and help us grow that. You can also get us on the website, coachloya.com. And if you, your podcast, Jake, does so great with, the national associations and the state associations. If you're a member or you're connected to that, please reach out to me, because I got in all this whole adventure I'm on is so that I can share this good teammate message and really make a difference in the world. So if I can reach out, I can get to you, I can get those listeners. If we can impact the coaches, well, the impact will be exponentially. And then finally, the WE gear. Go buy the WE gear, gift it to your coaches at Christmas time. That coaches, you're pain in your side and driving you nuts, give them that book. It might just change them.
I was, Lance was smiling. I was trying to get the WE gear up in my screen here. So those of you watching this on YouTube, you can see it. Great resource, along with all the other information available at coachloya.com. Lance, thank you so much for being on the podcast. All the best moving forward.
Yes, Jake, thank you so much for having me. And I look forward to more.
Okay. For listeners, remember the Zoom recordings of these interviews are being uploaded to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We appreciate you listening today. Come back again next time for another episode of the Educational AD. We also want to give a shout out to Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider, schools and colleges. You can get more information at hometownticketing.com. Thanks for listening again. Come back next time.